Hello and welcome to the JB Doula Podcast. I'm Jessica Brown, a certified birth and postpartum doula serving families in Western Pennsylvania, and here we'll talk about all things birth work, womanhood, and the childbearing years. Plenty will still apply to our other parenting journeys such as dads, trans, and non-binary friends. So let's get into it and let me kind of talk about what this podcast is going to be about. And it's going to be a combination of a few things. Part of it is my experience as a birth work, becoming a doula, and an aspiring midwife who's just begun her midwifery studies. Then there's also inviting moms on to share their birth stories, their parenting hacks, and, if applicable, their businesses. And then there's also, I want to have providers come on. I want chiropractors, massage therapists, nurses, midwives, OBs, other doulas. I want them to come on, have an open discussion of what it is that they do, answer any questions that you might have, as well as maybe debunk a few misconceptions of certain procedures or things that they do, and how they can better serve families through their childbearing years, because that's the basis of this, is the childbearing years. It is family, it is the rite of passage that is birth. It's all of these things that are super important, and I think education's a big part of it too, especially for Western PA. If you're near Pittsburgh, you probably know what a doula is, and you probably have a good idea of some of your birth options, whether it's a home birth or the birth center, which we have in Pittsburgh as well, or the different hospitals in your area. But the further you get from a city, you might not know. There's a lot of people who are like, a doula, what now? Who are you? What do you do? And for the beginning of my trajectory starting in 2017, when I first even heard of what a doula was and learned on my own as well, and then joined DONA and to get trained through them, it was like, how do I explain this thing that we should all have? We should all have these at our births, and we should have them at home when we're doing our postpartum. And that's because a doula is taking the form of something that we used to always have at births, and that's community. Like, we would have our sisters or our best friends, they'd be at our birth, and they'd have already gone to births themselves. Like, we all went to births growing up. We're familiar with it, we've seen breastfeeding, all of this stuff. So there's this body of knowledge, and they provide this support, and they help you through birth, and the midwife is there, and they make sure everything is okay, and you have your baby. And then as like a Western culture, have gotten more and more individualized, we become also more isolated. And that's even before an entire pandemic. It is that we move away from home. We don't have multi-generational families living very close together often. It does happen, but then also some of those family members, or all of them, have lives of their own that they must attend to, such as jobs to pay these bills, because we work to live in the United States. And they might not have this availability to be at your entire labor, or to be with you for weeks on end after you've had your baby to help you adjust, because doing this all on your own, that's unheard of. It's common now, but it's only in the last 100 years that this has been a norm. So it isn't really quote unquote normal. We're working against our biology, our culture, our selves as a species. We are community based, and we work better when we have people with us. So that's a little sneak peek into what a doula does. I'll have another podcast that goes more into depth into that, but this is also this is the inaugural episode. This is who am I and why listen to me, because that's what it is. It's a podcast. So as I said, I'm Jessica Brown, and I am a DONA certified birth and postpartum doula. I'll have a podcast as well that goes into DONA, because that's the certifying body that I am most familiar with. There are a lot of other ways to become a doula, and for those who are curious, we'll do that. And we'll also discuss what a doula does and doesn't do, such as, I'm not a midwife yet, but as a doula, I don't perform evaluations like a midwife was. I don't diagnose you, I don't take your blood pressure, that sort of thing. So that'll be a whole other podcast. But yeah, what got me on this path of birth work was going to my first red tent in my early 20s. And red tent, which might sound a little weird to some people who aren't familiar, it is not us sitting in a red tent. Like, you can if you want, but this is once a month women coming together, and it's based off of Anita Diamond's book, The Red Tent, which is historical fiction. But it harkens back to this time when women who were on their periods, who were menstruating, they weren't tending to fields or to babies or lifting heavy things. Like, they were doing some serious self-care, and they were together. So they had like this once a month built-in community of women where you talk about things you need to talk about, get it off your chest, but also like, hey, this thing is happening with my cervical mucus, like what's going on with this, and all of that stuff, where it's just like a literal holding of space and safe space to be a woman and talk about what you need to talk about and take care of yourself and not push ourselves super hard, because as a culture, we're very much like high productivity, high efficiency. We're expecting humans, not just women, but all humans, to just function at 100% every day of the week, 365. And that's not feasible. Like, we're dynamic creatures, especially women who are on a cyclical thing of every month of menstruation to ovulation. Like, we change a little bit, and that's okay. And our like productivity changes too, because this is this misconception that we should be gearing our value off of our production, and that's not the case at all. So I was learning about that, and then I also became really aware of just how my public health education wasn't that great. It left a lot of gaps. I had this understanding that period, can't get pregnant. Off your period, automatically pregnant, 100%. You're having a baby. And not at all about cycles. Like, ovulation was esoteric. It was like, oh, that's just because you're not on your period, and like any day of the week afterward you can have a baby. So learning about the cycles of fertility, and also about discharge. Like, they didn't teach me anything about discharge, which might be like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. Well, it's like, you should. This is a barometer for your health as a woman. It's like your kidneys with your urine. Like, you should know what your body is trying to tell you with your health. And it was just a huge disservice that I wasn't being told how to listen to my body and to like see the signs of health or illness or things like that, and just the basic understanding of just my reproductive cycle. So Red Tent really kind of laid this groundwork of, I really want to know about my body and my health. Holistic woman care became like the seed of my passion. And then the longer I was going to the Red Tent, the more I was hearing like, oh, like you had a home birth? Like, tell me about that. And it's like, oh, so not just my public health school failed me, but also the doctors prescribing young teens hormonal birth control and then not letting them know about the risks of heart attack, stroke, death, and then also prolonged infertility even after getting off of the pill. And that was the one that really stuck out to me, because it's like, oh, I was on the pill when I first started going to Red Tent. And I had never been told that if I get off the pill, I might not be able to get pregnant, ever. So it was learning these things where it's like, oh, like some people get off the pill, no problem, pregnant within a year. Others takes a couple years. And then for some, not at all. Like, infertility has been set from this like pill that we aren't told is potentially dangerous or life-altering. So it just feels like the more I learned, the more I was just like very frustrated. I was like, we have quote unquote choices, but we don't know what they are. So how are you supposed to make an informed decision that's best for you if you don't even know the pros and cons of each? So I dug deeper, I got more into this, and then it was like, oh, like our maternal health system is also not great. Like, of a developed country, we are the worst. We have the highest infant and maternal death rates. And it's just like, why? Why is this even happening when we're the United States and we put all this money into things and we're a developed country, we're doing great. So why do we have so many deaths and injuries and complications related to birth? Like, why is this a thing that brought us here in the first place? Like, we have generations of women who have birthed and brought us here. How come so many of us are dying? So education is huge, and kind of like seeing our system for what it is huge, and kind of taking it apart and inspecting like what are parts we can improve. And that's the part of like wanting to talk with providers. It's like, what can we do to work better together to improve not just maternal health outcomes, but also to be able to simultaneously honor and respect the rite of passage that is birth and of families, while also being safe and joining other quote unquote developed countries and having better rates of survival. Like, why, what can we do? Let's think about it. Let's try, let's collaborate, and let's try to solve this conundrum here. So I talked with some midwives, and I was like, I want to be a midwife. I've never had a baby, never attended a birth, but like, I feel it in my bones. I've been to Red Tent. I've learned about my body. I've learned about our health system. And I'm just like, I know this is what I need to do. Like, I need to be a part of the change. I need to be able to provide more women the choice, because we only have so many midwives, can only attend so many births. And we need more. We need more midwives. You can't relieve the pressure of a hospital if there's nowhere else for the low-risk pregnancies to go and births to go. So I'm like, I need to be a part of this change and of this choice. And they're like, how about doula first? How about you attend a few births, see if this is what you really want to do, and educate yourself more. And then while you're at it, like, become an EMT. Get some experience helping out patients and doing evaluations in that way. I was like, okay, I can do that. Because at the time, in 2017, I wasn't financially in a place, like, I'm fresh out of college, I've got all this debt, and realizing, oh wow, $10 an hour jobs don't pay for my bills on my own, and they're not prone to letting me leave at the drop of a hat to attend a birth. So I couldn't at the time do an apprenticeship as a midwife like I wanted to, but they gave me this route that I could do to help to like work towards it. So I found Dona International, and I did a birth and I did a postpartum same year. I was very ambitious, very excited. Did both workshops the same year and started working towards both certifications simultaneously. And it was a big reading list. It was a lot of things like going to childbirth education classes, breastfeeding classes, things like that, which of course I'll go more into the process of Dona certification for those who are interested. But doing that, and finally, I don't even know what year it is right now, 2021. It's been such a wild ride those last like 18 or so months. Time has been weird, but last fall, getting certified, like finally, I was like, yes. And I have my business, I started it, and I'm like, let's work towards getting some clients and just transition to full-time birth work. Let's do that. So, because I also, during the same beginning, I think it was 2018 is when I started working on the ambulance as an EMT. So I was doing both things, trying to start a business, finish my certification, and also work on an ambulance at the same time. Craziness. It was a lot. And it was really hard even then to attend births because I'm on an ambulance. Gotta get shift coverage, and we're short-staffed because it's an ambulance. So it was a lot of stuff. It was a wild ride to get to like where I am right now, August 2021. So this time last year, I actually left the ambulance because I had the opportunity to do a stay-at-home job, just doing like office stuff, but from home, which was great. So I could focus more on building up my business and my educational resources and finding clients, because I'm just slowly but surely, like, I want to transition to full-time birth work. Like, this isn't like a hobby or a part-time interest. Like, this is what I want to do. And this month I also started my midwifery training with Ancient Art of Midwifery. I started their distance learning program that's going to go in conjunction with an apprenticeship with a local midwife or two. So I'm putting in this work and this effort because it's like, this matters and this is what I want to do. And I also, if you notice there, like, I do art, and it's inspired by birth and the relationship between mothers and babies during the birth process and the childbearing years and all these things. Like, I want to explore this, and I want to feed into this passion and this interest. because it matters. Like, birth matters, your experience matters. So yeah, there's a lot to get into. There's a lot of it. And I hope that kind of gives you a little like sneak peek, so to speak, into like who I am. And if you want to come on and share your story or share what you do or your business, you can reach me at Facebook or Instagram at JB Doula Services or my website at jbdoula.com. I definitely want to have a lot of interviews. I definitely want to share people's experiences and their knowledge and their excitement and their trials and triumphs, all those things. Like, women supporting women. Like, let's do that, please. That sounds awesome. But yeah, thanks for joining me here at the JB Doula Podcast. This was our first episode, and I'm so glad to be here. Happy birthing.